ladies and gentlemen, on the line, I have Kenny BRYDON. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you for all that you're doing there, and how you doing today yourself?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm really looking forward to introducing my audience to you. So let's take it all the way back. Tell everybody where you grew up.
Well, I grew up part of my life in Washington State. My family was from up there, but by the time I was 5 years old, I was living down in Southern California, Oxnard, California. And I kind of was raised there into my teens, and eventually started to getting into a fair share of trouble, and that started bouncing back and forth from my mom down there in Oxnard to Washington State.
Okay. Tell everybody what your upbringing was like.
Well, I lived in a family that drank, and I drank myself. When I started to drink like an alcoholic, and the thing was is that I didn't necessarily fit into the world around me very well. I kind of felt like uncomfortable, at war with the world, and just the way things unfolded in my life. The abuse that I received as a small kid kind of pushed me away from trusting individuals, and eventually I put myself in a place where the solution to everything that I wanted was another drink, and that only brought me more and more trouble as I started to drink to solve the problems, and only made the problems worse, and round and around it went, and so that was what my teen years was, and it turned me towards criminal behavior. I was doing some pretty crazy stuff as a kid. By the time I was 14 years old, I was breaking into cars and homes, and and doing burglaries and stuff like that. And me and a friend, we stole a car from Oxnard and drove it down to San Diego, where we broke into his grandfather's house, and we stole an arsenal of weapons from him. And that put an all-points bulletin on us, armed and dangerous. They didn't catch us in a car, but eventually when we got caught, they put me in juvenile hall. And that started my journey in and out of the juvenile hall detention system. And so first of all, they started putting me into boys camp. And the problem with boys camp is that they didn't have a fence around it. And if it didn't have a fence, I wasn't going to stay. And I started to walk away from that. And by the time I kept on, they'd catch me, send me back to the camp. I'd run away again. And after I turned 17 in the middle of all that, they finally decided, well, okay, whatever, we're just going to get rid of you. And they sent me up to Washington State to live with my father. Living up there with him was kind of like, for a kid who thought the world was nothing but a party, was quite the event, because, he was a partier, and we started to, get high together, and then, kind of like do this crazy stuff. But he quickly realizes that his idea of having a party and mine were not the same. When I started to drink, I was very insane. I was very crazy. And, I just acted in some very, inappropriate and improper ways. And, finally he got to the point where he said, don't come around me if you're going to be drinking. And, so I started, choosing other places. But by the time I was 19 years old, I had, my father had kicked me out of the house. I had wound up out on the streets, and I was hitchhiking up and down the west coast of California, from Washington State all the way down to Texas, actually. And, and I was living off the good graces of other people, sleeping under bridges, and most of the time, I wound up drunk every night. But I didn't, as a result of that, that kind of lifestyle, I had isolated myself from the rest of the world. And I didn't think anybody cared about me. I didn't think anybody really cared if I lived or died. And so I just walked through this world without any kind of belief that there was any value for me in this place, in this world around me. And after taking somebody's life at the age of 19 years old, I stood on a freeway overpass looking over the side. And I was trying to decide whether I wanted to jump or not. And I was talking to this God that I, didn't really understand, but asking trying to just get some kind of a meaning out of my life. And the best thing that I ever, the decision that I came to was that I decided to walk off that bridge, go down and call the police, and turn myself in for a crime that I wouldn't have been caught for.
Wow. What do you think made you come to that decision?
Well, I have a belief in a God of my, I'm a Christian, and I have a belief that God was kind of in a way, very gentle way, was nudging me in that direction. I went came into the California prison system, turned 20 while I was in the county jail, and they put me in the prison system for serving a life sentence. I was doing pretty good on some levels. I was, got my GED within the first couple months that I was incarcerated, and I was studying electronics, and I was pretty sharp on that. I was fixing TVs when they had vacuum tubes in them, and some of your listeners are probably not knowing what those are, but I was doing good, but I was also still using other things, and I was smoking a lot of weed, and because the thing was going on in my head was that I had this insanity going on. I'm in a 12-step program, and we talk about this thing. It's like this idea that we see the world, and as I said earlier, is through this kind of an adversarial thing. It's like I'm at odds with them, people around me, either they were better than me or they were worse than me. There was nobody that I felt like that was an equal or anything like that. And I had this idea in my head that I was useless and worthless and I deserved to die. The only thing that really kind of kept that at bay was me using other substances. And I hadn't drank, while I was, when I was in prison, but I was using other things. And the first time that I did get a chance to drink, this God of my understanding kind of gave me a tap on the shoulder and said, "You do that, you're going to probably wind up dead in here." And, I still was using this stuff until such time as I got into this 12-step program. And I found out that, there's a way of dealing with this, my life in a way that, gave me the tools I needed through the 12 steps to live my life in a positive and meaningful and constructive way. And those 12 steps gave me the ability to feel at ease with myself and feel comfortable in my own skin.